Dude, he's so witty. It's like,
I mean, I'm actually the nicest guy in the world, just not on the internet.
he is probably one of the wittiest people I've ever.
He is
and
hilarious.
All right.
Sean McCorkle's a funny fucking guy. He says some ridiculous shit
I
online.
don't know. Is he still alive?
I gotta remain mysterious.
That is way over the line.
And we're back this week with episode 2 of the McCorkle Minute. Welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, October 26th. I decided to record another one a little sooner than I planned because the first one did way better than I thought. I genuinely thought that if I recorded a podcast and put it online that it would get 20 to 50 views. I didn't imagine anyone would actually listen. That's just me being honest. I was shocked to get a couple thousand. Not that that's anything to be, super proud of, but I was pleasantly surprised. I only saw a couple negative comments. Yes, unlike some people, Brendan Schaub, I do read all the comments. I think it's just important to have self-awareness and to know where you're messing up. So thank you for the few of you that told me that I sound like I'm deep-throating the mic, or you really enjoy listening to me saying every 3 seconds, or you like hearing me swallow a lot. Things like that. It's always appreciated. But no, I really do think that's important. I want to send a special shout out and thanks to the guys at PF Chang's over on the Reddit page. Some of you won't have any idea what that means, but those who do know what I mean. Those guys really came through for me, and as mean as they can be sometimes, they actually are very positive about everything. So in the spirit of that, I do want to make a couple apologies. Unlike Conor McGregor, I'm not going to say for absolutely nothing. That's what I thought about saying. But no, I do want to say that I'm sorry to Jay Schaub, or as many of you might know him, Axe Jay, Brendan's brother. I compared him to Bigfoot last week and put a video of him on there, and that wasn't that nice. He hasn't done anything to me, but I mean, if we're being honest, Jay seems like a nice guy, but really, I think we all know there's something missing there. Something's not quite right. If I had to guess what was missing, I would say it was a chromosome or two, or maybe there's one too many. I'm not sure exactly how that works. I'm not rocket science, as some people would say. But I did want to apologize to him for giving him a hard time. And in the spirit of that, I also want to tell a story. It's more of a rumor. I can't confirm this. I wasn't there. But I did hear this rumor going around these past couple of months. When Brendan Schaub went on tour, when he didn't want to spend time with his children, apparently, because now he says he doesn't book any dates, any comedy shows, because he just wants to spend time with his kids. He's real busy with his son's baseball season, even though Little League's been over for more than a month or two. But I heard a rumor that when they were out touring the country in a car, driving around like the big comedians do, instead of flying, that they were driving down the highway one day, and again, I can't confirm this, I wasn't there, but I heard they were driving down the road, and as they were going down the highway, Jay noticed that there was a cow with its horns apparently caught in some sort of fence, like caught in the barbed wire or something outside its enclosure. And, being an animal lover, he told Brendan to slow down and stop. He wanted to try to help the cow out because he felt bad for him. So they pull over, and of course they walk up and they see that indeed its horns are wrapped up in the barbed wire and it's having a hard time, getting out. And so rumor has it that while it was stuck in that position, Jay got an idea. So he started, for lack of a better term, he decided before he released the cow, he would give it the business. And so Jay went to work on the cow, and after a few minutes, Brendan said, "Hey man, come on, that's enough. It's my turn." And Jay said, "Sorry for being selfish," and he jumped off. So Schaub said thanks, came up and freed the bull's horns so it could run away, and then stuck his head in the fence. So I don't know. That's just a rumor I heard. I cannot confirm nor deny that. Sure hope my daughter or mom doesn't ever listen to this. But hey, I didn't report it. I just tell you guys what I hear. Moving on to UFC 294 was the big event last week. It went pretty much how I predicted, at least I thought. Actually, not really. I was right on the co-main event. Not so much right on the main event. I wasn't sure what was going to happen in the main event. But the co-main event was obviously Khamzat Chimaev versus Usman. And I was really shocked that Usman did as well as he did on short notice. I thought it was really kind of fortunate, let's say, for the UFC to bring in a guy who is a weight class lower, coming off 2 losses on very short notice to fight their golden boy, Chimaev. It was awfully fortunate for him that he got a replacement opponent who was in that position. Like I said, coming off 2 losses. His confidence down and no time really to train for the fight. That said, I thought Usman did amazing, and I think if he was had more time to train and was in better shape, not that he wasn't in shape, but he wasn't in his typical fight shape. We've seen Usman go 5 rounds without any trouble at all, and even outlast Colby Covington cardio-wise. So his cardio is never in question. He looked spent after that first round. Of course, some of that probably had to do with Chimaev pushing the pace the way he did, but speaking of spent, Chimaev was done after the first round cardio-wise. And this is a guy who is famous for saying, "I killed everyone." But no, he's famous for allegedly, his training, and not that you can't train hard and have bad cardio. I was famous for that, mildly famous for putting in 4 or 5 hours a day in the gym and training almost strictly cardio for my last UFC fight, and then gassing in 90 seconds anyway. So, but he should be able to push the pace. He just doesn't. Some people just don't have that natural cardio ability. Cain Velasquez could train 30 minutes a day, and he would still outlast me cardio-wise. Some guys just have that natural ability. Some guys don't. You see it with Conor McGregor, too. He tends to gas at about the halfway through the second to beginning of the third round. That's his gas tank. In his boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, same thing. 15, 20 minutes in, he is gassed in fights. So Chimaev, he's going to run into that. A problem if he fights a guy like Bo Nickel that he won't be able to take down, or at least won't easily be able to take down. And he usually wouldn't be able to take Usman down, I don't think, if Usman was, had time to prepare, and if his confidence was back where it used to be. But Chimaev is the most overhyped fighter. Not that he's not good, but he's not everything they're making him out to be. I was very disappointed in that fight, especially the second and third round. I told one of my buddies, the only time you're going to see that much dry humping by 2 UFC employees is if Bruce Buffer and Dominic Cruz have their car break down in the Mojave Desert. So, on to the main event of UFC 294. We had Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev. Obviously, Makhachev won by a high kick. Actually, I think it was a leg kick. It just hit Volkanovski in the head. But a not very high kick in the first round. There was a lot of action before that. Like I said, it's a Volkanovski. He's a ballsy guy, man. You got to respect him for stepping down and taking that fight. It's another short joke. But no, they for the few minutes they were fighting, there was a lot of talking going on in there. It was mostly small talk from Volkanovski. All right, I'll stop now. Volkanovski short. But yeah, Makhachev looked to be in far better shape than their first meeting. I don't critique men's bodies usually, but he looked far more muscular, looked far healthier, just in better shape, looked even bigger and stronger than the first time. He looked kind of depleted their first fight. I'm sure he just cut too much weight, and he learned from that. You wouldn't pick him to win by a head kick, but he did, so congrats to him. It'd be interesting to see what they do next in the lightweight division. But it was good to see a guy who's known to be primarily a wrestler mix it up. So that was really my thoughts on UFC 294. I didn't watch any of the other fights because if I want to see a bunch of Middle Eastern guys attacking each other, I would just turn on the news. I know that's mean. Okay. Someone once told me my sense of humor is so dark it was probably raised by its grandmother. And I told them, hey, that's racist. Don't say that. It is sad when you turn on the news, and a little odd sometimes. It's like no matter what channel you turn on, there's terrorist training videos. And when I watch them, I can't hope but just really think, man, I hope the war on terror doesn't come down to who's better on the monkey bars. Because if so, we're going to be in trouble. There's an awful lot of monkey bar training going on, it seems like, in those terrorist camps, and crawling through mud. You know, things that will probably happen. I don't know if they're planning on fighting us on playgrounds or what's going on. But that seems to be their training methods. So, enough of that. No more politics. I did mean to say at the beginning of this podcast that I actually didn't have anybody question my R. Kelly story. Usually, when people hear stories that sound too good to be true with celebrities like that, they're always like, oh man, that's bullshit, that didn't happen. But I didn't have any of that. But just in case any of you were thinking that, should be on your screen now, I'm going to post the invite that got forwarded to me to the party, and then a prank text I sent R. Kelly from Tron 2013, one of many. So those should be on your screen now if my editing works out. And probably not. It'll probably end up at the end of the video and not even be able to, follow along with it. But because I'm so good at video editing. But I just don't want to be like some people who claim that, Will Smith and The Rock and Floyd Mayweather Jr. and President Obama and Donald Trump and all these famous people come up and say what a huge fan they are when they met them, or asked them to be their trainer, or, told them that they're awesome. There's a lot of lies going on out there by some podcasters. There's a lot of lies going on out there from comedians as well. I would like them to remain anonymous, or, as Brendan Schaub would say, unanimous or anonymous. But I'll give you a hint. There's one comedian whose name rhymes with Joey Diaz, who tells stories seemingly on a weekly basis that I heard when I was 12 years old from my uncle. Like, I've heard literally half of his stories I heard when I was a kid. So he's either a lot older than me and older than my uncles, and they heard it from him, or he's just stealing people's stories. It's like the story he said that he went out to rob a gay guy one night, and then he punched him, and the gay guy said, there's two things I'm good at, S&D and fighting. Which one do you want? Like, really, my uncle told me that same story when I was a kid, that he, my uncle that was in prison that came home told me that same story. There's also a story that went around, speaking of tall tales. This one ended up being true. I thought I would tell you guys. I call it the legend of big panties. So I was at don't ask me how I got there. How would you ask me? Don't ask me how I ended up there, but I was at a Honduran house party one night. It was me, 2 or 3 Honduran girls, and like 10 MS-13 looking gang members with tattoos all over their faces. And it was made very obvious to me that I wasn't welcome there. We were right next to a crack house. There was all kind of drug deals going on next to us. It was in the worst part of Indianapolis, like the worst ghetto in Indianapolis. And I was sitting there. It was a girl that worked for me, her son's birthday party. She invited me, and when I had my business, I had this girl working for me, and I felt sorry for her. So, I thought I would go, and it would be a, little kid's birthday party. But it ended up looked like a scene out of Training Day, is what it looked like, where Denzel Washington would go, or where he lived with his Hispanic girlfriend. But yeah, it was a dangerous looking scene. So I'm sitting there, and the only guy who seems to speak really good English asked me if I'd ever been locked up before. And I said, no, not officially. And they all started laughing at me like I was the idiot who'd never been to prison before. He's like, you've never been to prison? With a Spanish accent. And I was like, no. He said, I was going to ask you if you ever heard about big panties. And told him no, I hadn't heard that. And he said he had been locked up in a prison by Chicago in northern Indiana. And there was a real big dude there. Doesn't matter what color he was, but they called him Big Panties. And it was because he wore a giant pair of panties on his head, like a headband, or I don't know, like a do-rag, but he wore like women's panties on his head when he would walk around instead of a shower cap. I was never sure why African-American guys wore shower caps on their head. If any of you guys want to enlighten me on that, I would like to know. I wondered that my whole life. But yeah, his shower cap was apparently a big pair of women's panties. And apparently this guy's story was that he was always, he was gay, obviously, and he would always go up and ask guys if he could S their D. And if they went for it, I guess everything was cool. If they said no, he would be like, okay, no problem. And then he would turn around and sucker punch them and knock them out. And then he would S their D anyway. So the guy told me, he goes, yeah, so he knocks you out and then you wake up and you're gay. And I didn't know that's all it took to be gay, but apparently, yeah, if you guy S's your D while you're knocked out, automatically you wake up and you're gay. I was laughing so hard. It might have been the tequila, but had me laughing. But I was laughing really hard when he told me this, and he said, ask anyone you know that's been locked up if that story's true. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I have several friends I know that have been locked up for extended periods of time. So I text one of them who had just gotten out of prison after a 9-year stint for a home invasion. It was funny when I talked to him. He's like, man, can you believe I got 9 years and all I did was break in with these two other guys and tie some people up? That's all I did. I didn't point a gun at him or anything. All I did was tie him up. Can you believe that? And I was like, yeah, that seems about right to me, to be honest with you. The 9-year sentence seems pretty well deserved. And so I asked him on text message, I said, hey, have you ever heard of anybody named Big Panties? And 5 minutes later, he texted me back. He said, yeah, that dude he's in prison here in Indiana. He's a legend. And I said, what's he legendary for? And he said, dude, he'll try to give you a BJ, and if you say no, he knocks you out and S's your D, which, immediately cracked me up. I showed the Honduran guy text and explained to him that was a friend I had that had been locked up, and he starts dying laughing and starts translating to the other Honduran guys, and then I was kind of a little more accepted. So a few days later, I was telling someone that story, and they texted their friend who had been locked up, and exact same response. He was like, yeah, man, that dude's dangerous. He tried to knock me out in SMID one time. He was trying to make me gay. Like it was I don't know, it was really funny. So I have no idea why I started telling you guys that story. Something reminded me of it. Oh, I guess the Joey Diaz Tall Tales remind me of the Big Panties story, so I'd figure I'd go ahead and tell you guys that. As far as stories go, I have another one for you this week that you guys might find interesting. It's not a celebrity story, but it's kind of a little bit of an insight to the insanity that is my life sometimes. I bring it all on myself, if I'm being honest. This story starts when I was in Australia to fight Soa Palele. Great guy, by the way. Never met him. But Soa's a great guy. He whipped my ass. I wish I had an excuse. He just beat me up like a redhead stepchild. I was in shape for that fight, too, and had really trained and really put some time in. And I remember when he picked me up, slammed me, and started beating me up, I thought, this must be how most of the other guys I fought on the local circuit felt, because I was helpless to do anything against that guy. He was a monster. So, in my defense, he was I think an alternate member of the Australian Olympic wrestling team, and a black belt in jiu-jitsu, black belt in judo, and a high-level kickboxer. So, after he beat me up, I told everyone, wait till he comes to the UFC, and a lot of the fighters were telling me, yeah, right, I'll beat that dude easy like UFC heavyweights. And then Soa came in and ran through 6 of them in a row like nothing. He's a tough guy, man. So I was in Australia. We had done a catch weight because we were both running a lot of steroids, most likely. But we had done a catch weight of how many ever kilos it was. I think it was 136 or something. It ended up being like 286. I could do the math. I think maybe that's 130 kilos. I don't know. Anyway, 140. But we 286 is what we had to weigh kilo-wise, and I had to cut 10 pounds to do it because even in shape I weigh close to 300 pounds. We'd cut not a lot of weight, but I wanted to get an IV while I was there, and the Australian promoter said he would pay for it. So we go to this doctor. It looked more like an immediate care place than an actual doctor's office. It was strange. I don't know. It looked like a neighborhood pharmacy type deal. But this guy was giving all the fighters IVs, and it was at night, like late at night, and the guy was really not happy to be there, nor was his sweet secretary. This old lady hated my guts. She did not want to be there. I tried to joke around with her. It might have been because I had, at one of the stores close to that doctor's office, I had bought a gummy worm that was literally probably 12 inches long and thicker than, I don't know, a garden hose. It was a big gummy worm, and obviously me being a man on a lot of testosterone, I was thinking it was funny to go around and swinging it and hitting people in the face with it like the other fighters, mostly the smaller guys, as they were waiting to get their IVs, like coming up behind them and smacking them in the back of the head with it, as if it were my D. But so I think the secretary saw that and didn't think it was funny. Neither did the fighters. But we go back there. It's me, this fighter Donnie Lester, who was the co-main event. Or no, it wasn't Donnie Lester. Who else fought? Maybe it was Donnie Lester. Yeah, it was Donnie Lester. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the story, but it was me, him, and a couple other Americans, and we're back there getting IVs, and, it's a tense situation because Soa and the other guys are in the next room getting IVs, so you're, seeing your opponent. It's day before the fight or night before the fight. You're nervous and just dreading it. At least I was. I was never excited to go out there and get punched in the face, so the doctor's being a real a-hole. And he's sitting over there writing. He hooks us up to IVs, like 3 or 4 of us, and he's over there writing stuff down, and he's being real short and just jerky with everybody who asks a question or says anything. And so I decide to, break up the, tension in the room a little bit. So I said, "Hey, Doc, is there supposed to be big bubbles going through this tube into my arm? I'm seeing these big bubbles going into my vein." And he jumps up scared to death immediately, and it's like, "What?" And I said, no, I'm just kidding, calm down. And he's like, "That's not funny." And everybody starts laughing. He wasn't laughing, but everybody else was. He didn't think it was funny. I loved it. I was cracking up, and I said, "Sorry, I was just trying to lighten the mood a little bit in here." And he said, "That could kill you." I was like, "Yeah, I know, that's why it was a joke, like I was just joking around." And he didn't like it, so he notifies me that me and 2 or 3 of the other fighters, we don't have a current HIV test on file for the fight commission. And I was like, "No, I took mine before like a month ago when I sent it." And he said it had to be within a certain number of days, within a week or something in Australia for the athletic commission. So he had to do another one. And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. I can't go do one." He goes, "Oh, no, we can do them here. We've got automatic HIV tests. And like they come back in 30 seconds. And I was shocked at that. I'd never heard of such a thing. I thought it had to be sent to a lab. And so I asked him if I could buy a couple of them from him. And he goes, "Well, what do you want that for?" I said, "So that I can have girls tested before I go on dates with them." I was still single at the time. And everyone starts laughing, but I was serious. Like I was, I thought an automatic AIDS test, that's worth $25 a pop to me, or whatever. I don't know how I'd go about asking people. But anyway, back in those days, I was constantly, worried about getting HIV, especially since when I had fought before for my first 10 fights, there was no testing, there was no anything, no athletic commission involvement in any of my fights. This is in the Wild West days of MMA before I got to the UFC. So I had guys at a fight one time where I could taste blood real heavy in my mouth. I was clenched up with a guy, and I kept thinking, "I hope that's my blood." And we back off. I push him off me from the clinch, and I look in his nose. It's just pouring blood. So I realized I just swallowed, a couple ounces of this guy's blood, and he hadn't been tested before the fight. And didn't look like the cleanest guy I'd ever seen either. I mean, he stunk when I was fighting him, literally and figuratively. But it looked like he hadn't taken a bath and smelled like he hadn't taken a bath in forever. And I was like, great, I just drank that guy's blood. So also had a guy's blood, elbowed a guy one time, and his blood, it cut him, and his blood shot a stream right into my mouth, eyes, everything. And he also didn't look like the cleanest guy I'd ever, gone up against. So I was constantly worried about AIDS. I mean, I worry about a mosquito giving it to me. If they give you malaria, why can't they give you AIDS? So plus, at that time I was sharing a lot of needles with homeless guys, and that made me nervous too. I heard that's not a good thing to do. Just joking. I don't share needles with homeless guys. So back to our Australian doctor. He comes and gets, pricks each one of our fingers and puts it on the test, and then he goes on a little test strip. He goes over and sets it on his desk, and then he walks out of the room for it has to be 20, 30 minutes, and our IV bags are running low, and after 30 seconds, I'm kind of like peering over. I'm hooked up to an IV, and sit in a chair, and I can't walk over there because the IV wasn't on a portable stand or anything, so I had to sit where I was at, and I'm like asking the fighters, can you see anything on that? And they're like, see what? I'm like, I don't know, like look for a positive sign or a plus or a minus or a skull, something, I don't know, like something that will give me an indication if I have HIV or not. And just because I was always nervous about that, one of my deep down fears. And the doctor comes walking back in, and I said, hey, Doc, can I give you some advice on your bedside manner? No offense. And he was like, sure. And I said, when you give somebody an HIV test and it only takes 30 seconds to come back, maybe don't leave the room for 30 minutes while they're waiting for the results. I said, you had me, sitting in here sweating for the last 30 minutes, wondering if I have, a few years left to live. And he kind of started, smiled, kind of laughed a little bit. He goes, I'll keep that in mind. And so he looks at the first strip of one of the fighters. He goes, you're good, throws it in the trash. Looks at the other guy, you're good, throws it away. Looks at the next test, you're good, throws it away. He gets to mine. So, of course, he's making me wait till last. And so he looks at mine, and he goes, huh, and just kind of stares at it for a second. And I said, what's going on? He goes, let's do another one. And I said, wait, is it positive? Is there a problem? I'm freaking out. I said, is there something wrong? He goes, listen, these aren't 100% accurate. They're only like 99% accurate. Don't freak out at the first positive. And when he said that, I immediately, I don't know, talking about your life flashing before your eyes, I regretted every decision I had ever made at that point, or whatever. I was thinking, I got to tell my mom and dad I have AIDS. I got to tell my kids. Who's going to raise my kids? I just started freaking out, just thinking, man, I cannot believe this. And just, for 20 seconds sitting there, and my heart is racing, and I'm thinking just oh my gosh, oh no, this can't be, and shouldn't have shared needles with those homeless guys. No, I'm thinking, I cannot believe this. And all of a sudden I hear him say, I'm just joking. And I had a sigh of relief, relief mixed with anger when he said that. And I said, dude, that isn't funny. And he goes, I don't know, you thought it was pretty funny when you had your little bubbles going through your arm earlier. So he got me back. So after the initial giant sigh of relief, I told the doctor, I can't believe I fell for that one. The oldest trick in the book, the old "you've got AIDS from a doctor" trick. And he started laughing. I told him, that's not that funny, man. And he said, you thought it was funny earlier when you told me you had bubbles going into your arm. So I guess I had that one coming. Like I said, I bring a lot of stuff on myself, but that was the few minutes when I had AIDS story. I actually had to give a blood donation recently, not because I'm a great citizen, but because when you take testosterone, your red blood cell count can get too high sometimes. So I had to go give blood, and they're thanking me for being a lifesaver. And I told them, I save lives all the time. I wore a mask all during COVID, so I saved thousands of lives, when that was going on. But I told him, I got to be honest with you, I'm kind of here for selfish reasons. I just got to give blood because my red blood cell count's too high. And the nurse is like, oh. So I should have just stuck with it. I was a hero in giving blood. But for some reason, I decided to tell the nurse taking my blood when I was doing a donation that story. I said, hey, you want to hear about the time I had AIDS for 30 seconds one time? And then she stops as she's hooking me up to the needle, and she's like, I'm sorry? And I was like, oh, no, I don't have AIDS or HIV. I said, I thought I had it one time. And she still's looking at me, not wanting to continue with the procedure. And so I start laughing. I said, I don't have it. I never had it. I had a doctor trick me one time, which kills the whole story if you tell that ahead of time. But I don't know why I was telling that nurse that. I guess because I was giving blood, and I thought she would think it was funny. So I told her the story, and she did not think it was funny. And they act weird now. I've gone back there twice since then to do donations. You got to go every 3 or 4 months when your red blood cell count's too high. And she doesn't seem happy to see me every time I go there. So just because I told her I had AIDS for 20 seconds one time. Moving on to some UFC news. I just now read that John Jones is apparently out as the main event of UFC 295. Looks like they're saying he tore his pectoral muscle. I think they put a video out of it also. Yeah, it looks like there's a video of it, of him getting injured. Everybody always wants to accuse people of faking injuries to get out of fights. I don't think this one is fake. It's probably pretty legit on an event of that magnitude. I think the good news is for Jon Jones, he'll get what he really wanted, which is to face Stipe when Stipe's over 50, because, I mean, he's been waiting on this one. It's amazing. Jon Jones, it was funny to me. Not a big fan of Jon Jones, by the way. I was amazed when he set out for 3 years while Francis Ngannou was fighting and was the heavyweight champ. And he wouldn't fight. Francis kept saying he wanted $20 or $30 million or whatever it was to fight Ngannou. And the minute Ngannou signs with PFL, then Jon Jones comes back and starts saying, yeah, look at Ngannou running from me, and approaches him in public with cameras on him and asks him why he's running from him. And Ngannou called him out and said, I was there for 3 years. Where were you? And Jones had a song and dance about having to have 3 years to put on the weight. But I bet he's glad. It says he'll be out at least 8 months, so I guarantee you he's glad he'll skip the rest of the USADA era in the UFC. And guarantee you, too, once he got injured, he jumped out of the testing pool faster than he jumps out of his car when he hits a pregnant woman. And it looks like they've moved the Jiri Prochazka Alex Pereira fight to the main event. That always stinks when they lose a main event and they just move the co-main event up. Like, hey, it's just as good. Slide the co-main event up. They've added Pavlovich versus Aspinall, which is not a bad co-main event. Pavlovich, from what I've seen, is an absolute monster. But they've moved that up to the co-main event. As far as the rest of the card goes, I know people will be excited about Mackenzie Dern and Jessica Andrade. I don't really like to watch women fight. Not really my thing. Primarily because I'm sexist. No, I just don't like. I don't like seeing women get hit unless they really deserve it. Just kidding. Again, the rest of the card, for this to be a Madison Square Garden card, the undercard, I follow the sport and I don't see almost any names I recognize on the undercard so far. Looks like there's 9 announced undercard fights and 0 fighters I recognize. And on the main card, a few I don't recognize also. So I hope we're not moving more toward the boxing model, which seems to be more and more that the cards are getting watered down to where you've got a bunch of guys making their debut or making the minimum UFC pay or not having fought very many times so that they're saving money on the payroll. But it seems to be kind of the way it's going for the last little bit here. I don't understand why guys, when I was with UFC, I fought 3 times in 7 months. I would have liked to have a little more time between fights than that, but I don't see any reason why fighters can't fight 3 times a year. Dana always says they fight 3 times a year, but that's not the case. A lot of these guys, especially the champs, fight once a year. It makes no sense to me. And some of the better guys, you look at, Conor or Jon Jones, they fight on average once every 2 years. It just, I guess when you've got the money, maybe you don't feel like fighting, but it is a very short window for most of these guys. And I think Jon Jones will look back on his career one day, and when he gets injured, like he's getting older now, he gets hurt, and let's say he's out for a year, he will wish he didn't waste that 3 years of his prime and the other 3 years he wasted of his prime earlier doing whatever it is he was doing, when he could have been fighting and could have been adding wins to his record and money to his bank account. So UFC Night 295, I probably won't pay for. Definitely won't pay for, but hopefully I'll see the highlights, if you know what I mean, at some point. I think I'm going to move along to, I was going to do it last episode. I promised we'd do questions and answers from, listeners, and I didn't. Kind of ran out of time. So we're going to do a few questions that I've had for a couple weeks here that you guys had sent me, and we'll see how that goes. So question number 1. I had a lot of these DM to me on the Fighter and the Kid Reddit page, so I'm just now seeing some of these because I really, believe it or not, I want to make this as spontaneous as possible and not seem rehearsed. So question number 1, he says, if your uncle Jack McCorkle was stuck on a roof and couldn't get down, would you help your uncle jack off? Good one. Okay, so I would say no, he'll have to get off himself, the roof. Question number 2, you guys. I once heard you say in an old podcast that your little brother once went to rehab and they performed an actual exorcism on him. Is that true? And if so, can you tell us more? It's kind of a long story, but sure, why not? It's not really MMA related. I have a little brother who once smoked weed, I think like 16 hours a day for something like 9 years straight. And from the time he was like 16 till he was 25, and my parents found out about it and were less than thrilled that he had been smoking that much weed. Like, he would make Snoop Dogg look like an amateur instead of a worthless, washed up piece of shit. I don't like Snoop. But he would make, and if you do like Snoop Dogg, just check out his response to Conor McGregor losing to Floyd Mayweather, and I guarantee you'll instantly not become a fan.
50-0, nigga. The motherfucking champ, nigga. 50-0. Fuck that motherfucking punk-ass McGregor, you bitch. Fuck him. Motherfucking champ, nigga. Yeah, nigga. That's what you get for coming to a motherfucking gang fight with a butter knife, you bitch-ass motherfucker. Fuck you, nigga. Money team, champ, nigga. Where the party at, Floyd? Yeah.
Or how about the fact that Snoop Dogg is a murderer, or accused murderer, that he's been accused of rape and sexual assault 100 times, and that he says the most racist stuff ever, acts like he's a gangster, lied about being a highly recruited college basketball player like Schaub, except his football was Schaub, but he lies about everything. Him and Shaq. I got a whole series I'll do on Shaq. Back to my little brother and his time at rehab. The thing about Shaq is he's already been impressive enough. Like, he doesn't have to lie about. He tells so many lies about everything. For example, who owns Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley and the Beatles? I do. No, Shaq, you don't. You don't own them. You own stock in a company called Authentic Brands Group, owned by Jamie Salter, who I know personally because I met him when he bought Tap Out, and they wanted to sponsor me when they found out I was the co-main event at UFC 124. They had no use for me until they found out I was the co-main event. Then all of a sudden they wanted me to be their, flagship athlete under the new regime of Tap Out. So I met with the Jamie Salter guy, who's a billionaire now, and he offered me like $30,000 to go with Tap Out. I was only getting, I think, 17 from TCB, Taking Care of Business Fightwear, who ended up not paying me after the fight, and I had to threaten to sue them to get any of my money, and they still stuck me for $1,000 of my $17,000, with their excuse being that the owner had cancer. And when I texted them and told them I needed my money, they're like, "Oh, well, our owner has cancer." I said, "Boy, that's terrible." So about that $17,000, I'll go ahead and need that. And they gave me a song and dance. Anyway, Jamie Salter owns Authentic Brand Groups. Shaq doesn't. He owns a small percentage of stock. Snoop Dogg sucks. Shaq sucks. Jamie Salter's a good guy. Okay, or rich guy anyway. Back to my little brother in rehab. He goes to this Christian-based rehab place, or Pentecostal something. One of the ones that they speak in other languages, just at random. So he went to a Christian rehab place, and when they got there, the guy who runs the place didn't believe that he was there for weed. He said, "No one comes to rehab for weed. What's your real problem?" And my little brother's like, "No, really, I just smoke a lot of weed." And my parents said they weren't going to pay for my school anymore, or my car or apartment if I didn't come here to rehab. So he goes to this rehab, and the guy keeps telling him he doesn't believe him. He thinks he's hiding something. So they keep accusing him of things. I guess Britney Spears' cousin was at the same rehab, and just everyone there was teasing my brother for being a lightweight. Like, you have to come to rehab for just weed? What a loser. You should be on heroin like us. Just giving him a hard time. So they decided, since he didn't want to be honest with him and tell him what their supposed real drug addiction was, or his supposed real drug addiction, that they needed to call in a specialist. So they call in a guy who's an exorcist, like part-time exorcist, and my brother swears that he looks just like Pee Wee Herman, but not the Pee Wee Herman you remember from Pee Wee's Playhouse, the Pee Wee Herman who got arrested at an adult bookstore, or the Pee Wee Herman, I would say rest in peace, but he was a pedophile. He got caught with child pornography too. So to recap, Pee Wee Herman sucks, Snoop Dogg sucks, Shaq sucks, and doesn't own any of those trademarks. Anyway, so this guy, he says, looks just like Pee Wee Herman. like the dirty version of Pee Wee Herman, but he's wearing a tuxedo for some reason, and comes in, and they tie my brother to a chair, and my brother had been warned that if he didn't cooperate with this exorcism, he'd already been there like 26 of the 30 days, and they said if he didn't cooperate with this exorcism, that it was the last stage of the treatment, that they would fail him in the program, in which case my parents told him he had to start over and go again to a different rehab or to that one again. So he's 4 days away from being out. He said I can do anything for 4 days, even if it means having an exorcism performed on me by a guy who looks like Pee Wee Herman. They tie him to a chair. They tie my brother to a chair, strap him down, and the guy starts pacing back and forth, and occasionally he's throwing holy water on my little brother. And he asks my little brother what his name is, and my little brother says his name. And he goes, "No, not you. What is your name, demon?" And my brother doesn't really know what he means, so he said, I told you my name. And he says his name again. I'm sure you guys could find my brother's name, but I don't want to out him. So, talking about his rehab experiences, he throws some holy water on him again and says, "What is your name, demon?" And my brother says, "Man, listen, I know you're just trying to help, but I'm not. I don't have a demon. I'm not possessed. I just like to smoke weed. That's all." And the guy starts stomping around with a Bible and throwing holy water on my brother over and over again, saying, "Demon, I said, what is your name?" And so my brother starts laughing at this point. He can't take it. So he starts laughing when the guy does that, even though he's strapped to a chair. And the guy didn't appreciate the laugh, so he gets right up in my brother's face and goes, "That's the spirit of mockery," right in his face, and like spitting in his face while he's, yelling at him. And my brother really starts laughing now because the guy's just taking this way too serious. I should have prefaced the story with that my brother is deaf in one ear from who knows what, but he was deaf in one ear, and they thought it was a demon that was causing him to be deaf in one ear. So when my brother starts laughing at Pee Wee Herman, saying that's the spirit of mockery, he starts laughing, and the guy that looks the exorcist smacks the shit out of my brother's ear, I guess, with his right hand, hits him in his left ear to try to smack the demon out of him, I guess. So he smacks it and says, "Come out, demon." And my brother got really upset at this point, and he said, "Dude, listen, I'm not demon possessed, but if you smack me again, you're going to think I am." He said, "Do not hit me again, like I'm not going for that." And the guy's like, "I'm not afraid of you, demon," and starts walking back and forth, pacing and screaming, asking him what his name is and speaking in tongues in different languages. And my brother was just like sitting there, and he was like, "Dude, just tell me what to say. I'll say the right thing. I don't know, but don't touch me again." And the guy, jumping in his face again. And so after 10 minutes or so, this isn't going to work. They can tell he's not playing the game. So they have this, I don't know if it's a nurse or the helper girl come in, and then they start talking to my brother. And they're like, hey, it's okay, you're back. You're back. You went through a rough few minutes, but you're back here. We were able to cast out some demons. And my brother was like, "I was here the whole time." And they're like, no, it just seems that way. You were foaming at the mouth, and you were trying to break the restraints, and you were acting crazy. And my brother said the only one doing any of that is the exorcist guy who had left the room at this point, I guess. But they were pretending as if he had been exorcised, I guess, or the demon had been. So they gave him a sheet afterward that had identified 68 demons that he apparently had. And they were the cause from everything to him being pre-diabetic, to his need to smoke weed, to his deafness in one ear. And they told him that when they cast the demons out, sometimes it takes a while to regain your hearing, especially when you've been smacked in the ear, probably popping your eardrum. But when they told him it would be a matter of time and he would get his hearing back, and the demons were gone for sure. He never did get his hearing back. I'm not sure they'd ever stopped smoking weed, but it was a great story. He called me. I got like an emergency phone call right after that happened, and a voicemail from him whispering said, "I need you to call me right now at this number." And he gave me a Texas number. That's where his rehab was. And I knew he's in rehab, but as far as I knew, he wasn't allowed to contact anybody. So I call back the number, and he answers it whispering, and he's like, "Listen, dude, you got to get me out of here." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You got to finish the program." He goes, "No, you got to come get me. You got to get me out of here." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "They just performed a mother effing exorcism on me." And he's like, the guy looked just like Pee Wee Herman. So I start cracking up. Like, I start dying laughing. He's like, it ain't funny, dude. Like, you got to come get me, like, for real. And I was like, dude, you do the crime, you got to do the time. I don't know what to tell you. And he goes, they got another one planned. He goes, I'm not doing it. I'm escaping. He was making his plans to escape out of there. So I think he later on had a serious conversation with the guy who ran the program and told him he wasn't participating in any more exorcisms. The guy was telling him he probably wouldn't get his hearing back then, and probably would still desire to smoke weed if he didn't do at least one follow-up exorcism. So I don't remember telling that story on a podcast. Apparently I did at some point, and someone heard it and liked it. I was a little more in-depth this time. Hopefully that guy entertained you guys. Question number 3. Is there any inside info or inside stories you can give us regarding your time in the UFC? Something that most fans don't know. I have a lot of those. I'll be telling you guys over the next several episodes. I was thinking about this the other day, not because I knew this question is coming, but I was telling someone had asked me if the UFC gives you a per diem and how it all works with bringing your cornermen and whatever. You get, when you sign with the UFC, they require you to get a bunch of medical testing that's out of your own pocket. Ends up costing like $3,000. I don't know if they still do that, but when I did it, I had to pay for all my own medical testing, which stinks when you're making $8,000 to fight and $8,000 to win, and $3,000 of it's already gone to medical testing before you get there. But I had to go through a lot of medical testing, I guess, to make sure that I didn't already have brain damage or didn't already have physical issues. They act like it's for fighter safety, but it's probably more to cover their asses if you should develop brain damage at any point in the future, which is smart on their end. I don't have any bitter feelings toward the UFC. They did everything they said they would do in the contract and more. Of course, I think I deserve to make more, and all fighters do, but that's everybody. I'm sure a lot of the people that worked for me in the past thought they deserved to make more. But as far as the inside stuff, you get there, they give you one plane ticket and then a ticket for one cornerman. Your other cornermen are responsible for their own travel, or a lot of fighters pay for it. I always ended up paying for it and then would regret it, because then I'm out another $1,000 in flights, and then I pay for their hotel because I don't want to share a room with 3 other guys, so I end up spending another $1,500 on their room. So by the time I got to my first UFC fight, or to a UFC fight, if I didn't win the fight, by the time I paid my medical testing and the travel for my coaches and hotels, I would be breaking even. You don't have to do the medical testing every fight, but you have to do it before your first one. So that part stinks. They do give you a $500 per diem when you get there. It comes in cash in an envelope. They just hand it to you. They make you sign 200 posters when you get there, like event posters. I had one, I think it was for UFC 124, where mine got torn, or was torn when they give you one. You got to sign 200 right when you get there, when you check in. They have somebody there sliding them. You guys have probably seen it. If you watch the behind-the-scenes UFC stuff, you'll see them, fighters signing posters. They give you one of the 200 in a tube after your fight, but they gave me one, and mine was torn, and I was the co-main event at that event, so I really would have liked to have had a non-torn poster. I mean, it had a big tear all the way through it, and I asked them for another one, and they gave me a blank one, and I was like, well, no, I mean another signed one. Can I get another one? And they're like, oh, no, we don't have any extras. And I was like, out of the 200, you don't have any extras? I have a torn one. Can I switch it with another one, and they can have the torn one, like someone else can have the torn one? And they were like, no, these all go to sponsors and charity and so on and so forth. I forgot to tell you, when the first time they told me I had to sign them at my first UFC event, I said, hey, am I getting paid for signing these? And they all started laughing, all the staff that was there. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of serious about that. And Burt Watson, who used to run a lot of stuff for the UFC, you see him on a lot of the pre-countdown, videos, pre-fight countdown. He goes, man, you're not going to last long around here. Because I asked if I was getting paid for something that I thought I should rightfully be paid for, even $1 a poster, it seems like. But they said they were going to charity and sponsors. So I was like, oh, that's all right, I guess. I'll sign them. I mean, not that my signature was worth anything, but you expect to be paid when you sign things. And then they told me I could take my blank one and go have everyone else re-sign it. And I was like, I'm not going to go chase down fighters on the event, 20 other fighters or 21 other fighters, and ask them for autographs. I just would have liked to have had my event poster. So I look online to see if anybody is selling one, because I really, when I got home, I was sad I didn't have that I had mine torn and I can't like frame it or anything. And I look online for UFC 124 posters, and I see them listed on the UFC's website for $599.99 each, like with a quantity of 100 of them or something, or 150. So I was like, oh, so these don't necessarily go to sponsors or charities. They just sell them on their website for $600 each times 200. That's $120,000. Assuming they sell them all for $600, or I guess minus what they give the fighters their copy. I couldn't sell my torn copy almost for anything and couldn't repair it. So not that I was going to sell it, I just would have liked to have had that. That would have been a cool thing to have. So that's why I was looking to buy one. I thought if I could get it for $50 or something, then I would just soon do that as opposed to ask for autographs. But they, so that's why you see, if you ever watch the behind the scenes, like with Conor McGregor's little camera crew that follows him around, when he signs the posters, you'll see Conor just put a straight line across in a marker. He doesn't sign his name. He just puts a line and then move the next poster. He puts a line, move the next poster. And what I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, what I heard is he said if he wasn't being paid to sign it, he's not signing it, like whatever it is, poster, glove, anything. So, because his signature obviously is worth a lot, and he's not signing it for free. And they're like, well, everybody has to sign these. And he's like, okay. So he just puts a line on there, so it's not even his signature, which I'm sure they're not thrilled about, but you would think they would, give him something. I also had to sign 500 Topps trading cards, and then I didn't even get a Topps trading card. Like, they were all trading cards of me, and then I had to go on eBay and buy my own 3 versions of my own trading card. For like $7.99 each, $7.99 each. And then I later on got a check for $6.76 for my Topps royalties. So the 500 trading cards I got were apparently selling for a penny each, maybe a little bit more, if I do my math correctly. So they were only selling, well, depending on what percentage I was getting, but let's say I was getting 10%, they were selling for 12 cents each. But I couldn't even get one. Like, I literally had to go on eBay to do that. I didn't like that. As far as the video game goes, and this is great, you guys will like this. The video game, I got a check for $2,000. I thought I was getting. Actually, when I got the check, I thought it was a joke. I had talked to friends in the NFL and friends in the WWE when I found out I was going to be on the UFC video game. And the guys at WWE said I've gotten all the way up to $125,000, $150,000 to be on a game. It just depends on how many wrestlers and how many copies they sell, so on and so forth. The guys I know in the NFL that I talked to told me because of the union, it's just a flat rate for certain players. And then if you're the cover athlete, obviously you get more if there's different tiers that you're in if you had a certain number of years in the league. But the guy I talked to was a linebacker for the New England Patriots, and he told me, he was a pretty guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, I saw him at a resort, but he told me that I think he said he got $24,000, $26,000 or something, and that was the least that anyone he knew of was getting on that game on Madden, because they spread it out because they have a union. But I got $2,000 for being on the game. I felt pretty bad about that until I hit up Miguel Torres and asked him how much he got for being on the UFC video game, and he said $1,500. Why? How much did you get? And I started laughing. And then I asked Matt Mitrione how much he got for being on the game, but only because I knew he didn't make it onto the game, and it would irritate him. So I asked Matt that, and he just said, "You're a dick" back. So, but yeah, I thought the $2,000, I wanted to write FU on it and send it back to him, but my agent talked me out of that, and Monty Cox told me, it's a free $2,000, you might as well take it. And the most disappointing part about it was when I found out I was on the game, I was so excited. Or this is the second most disappointing part about it. I got on there and saw my character, and I looked like cross-eyed Christopher Walken on the game. Like, I literally looked like Christopher Walken if his eyes were crossed. They had me convinced for a while that I was cross-eyed and that I looked like Christopher Walken. Like, I kept looking at the video like, I can't believe that's what I actually look like on there, because everything else was dead on. Like, the tattoos, the everything. And so the haircut, the scars on my head, on my face, everything. I have a scar on my eyebrow that's on there. It was just crazy, the detail, but it made me cross-eyed. So I don't know if I was looking at the camera cross-eyed or what was going on, or if I'm just cross-eyed and don't know it. But I get a copy of the game. My son, I think, was 9 at the time, and I thought he would be so excited to play as his dad. I told him he came home from school that day, and they had sent me advance copies that's the one thing I did get for free, but I had made so little on the game, I ended up think we kept the PlayStation 1, and I autographed the Xbox One, asked Chris Lytle to autograph it also, and then sold it on eBay for $100, the copy. So my son put it in the PlayStation and started downloading the game, or whatever the extras you have to do, and I had to make a phone call. So I come back downstairs, and he's playing the game, and it's me versus Cain Velasquez, and I'm just getting murdered, like just getting beat up, as would happen in real life. I was like, this game's realistic. So I'm trying to help my son. I'm looking through the booklet, and I'm like, hey, I think you got to push, X and O at the same time to stand up, or I'm trying to, give him, push the triangle to do this, push the R1 button. I'm trying to give him instructions, and he goes, Dad, I'm Cain. And I was like, wait, you're playing against me on the game? Like, you're playing as Cain against me on the game? And he goes, Dad, no offense. Keep in mind, this is a 9-year-old. He says, Dad, no offense, but you're like the second worst heavyweight on here. Only Pat Barry's worse than you. And he said, you got like an 83 rating overall. Like, Cain's a 99 or something like that. And I was just like, you little bastard. But he talked about a slap in the face. So I told him maybe he should play as one of his friends' dads on the game. And he told me he didn't have any friends who had a dad on the video game. And I was like, exactly. But yeah, he wasn't impressed. And then he asked me later on why I was cross-eyed on the game. He goes, look at your eyes on this. And I was like, oh, everybody knows. He's even a 9-year-old. So yeah, that was an interesting thing. I was more disappointed in that than I was the pay, but the pay wasn't very good either. And I guess that's my UFC inside story for this week. Like I said, I don't mean to sound bitter, but UFC needs a union, man. The fighters need a union. Things would improve drastically. I'm sure they've improved to a degree since I was there. It's been a long time, but I know pay has a little bit, especially for the top guys. So I think we'll end the questions answer session with that. And we'll finish up this episode with my pick for the Francis Ngannou-Tyson Fury fight, if you want to call it a fight. I expect it to be a major disappointment no matter what happens outside of Ngannou landing a wild punch and knocking Tyson out. I don't see it happening. I don't think anybody else sees it happening. He's got the same chance that Deontay Wilder had, I think, as far as landing a punch and dropping Tyson, but I don't think he'll be able to hang in as long as Deontay was able to. I think Tyson will just try to, tie him up and, smother him until he gets tired and then outbox him. Probably will knock him out at some point. I would say inside of 8 rounds. I think he'll go in thinking he's so far superior to Ngannou that he can carry him as long as he wants and then just finish it whenever he wants, kind of like the way Mayweather did with Conor McGregor. Not you guys, but people say whatever they want about McGregor and Mayweather, but Mayweather carried him. He knew when he was going to end the fight, and he could have ended it about any time he wanted. He had to get through the first 2 or 3 rounds when Conor was most dangerous, because anything can happen, but Mayweather knew that he could end it when he wanted. Exactly what Nate Diaz said after the fight is exactly what happened, and that's what Brendan Schaub was arguing with him about. Schaub, as always, was wrong, but Nate Diaz was right, and that's going to be kind of the way I see this one going. I would love for Ngannou to knock him out. That would be absolutely amazing. And it can happen, like I said before. Ngannou has ungodly punching power, unlike anything I've ever seen. I've never seen a guy hit like that, and a guy that can hit with the power he can hit from such a short distance. I mean, he only needs inches to throw with crazy power, and he's beat some good, strikers in the past. He about sent Overeem's head off into orbit, and Overeem's not a great technical boxer, but he is a world kickboxing champion, so he's got some boxing skill, and Ngannou, just throws wild, and I think that's what he should do. I don't think he should try to outstrike him. I don't think he should try to outpoint him. I think he should go out there and just do what he does, charge Fury and throw some bombs and hope that he catches him in the first couple rounds. Otherwise, you're going to look at a long, boring fight until Fury knocks him out. And not really embarrassed as another MMA fighter, but MMA fighters aren't looking great in these boxing matches. Just once, I know it's happened in the past. You had Art Jimerson, the guy who wore one glove, who lost to Hoist Gracie, and then we also had when Randy Couture beat James Toney. But I would like to see one of these boxers or one of these, YouTube kids like the Paul brothers get in and do an MMA match for once with a UFC fighter or ex-UFC fighter, just to remind everybody who wins in a real fight. And if you guys don't mind, I'll leave you this week with a poem I wrote a little bit ago. It's kind of embarrassing for me to admit, to be honest with you, that I dabble in poetry. I guess no more embarrassing than people that are still trying to become rappers at my age, but I do dabble a little bit in poetry, more the classical style, so I figured I'd share one with you guys. Hopefully you'll like it. If not, don't give me too hard of a time. But let me see here. I wrote it down to make sure I get it right. It's more of a haiku, I think. Not really. I don't know what a haiku is. But here we go. Roses are red, violets are blue. Brendan Schaub is the worst stand-up comic I've ever seen, and Raul Rosas Jr. is one ugly bastard. Holla.